Thank you very much.
Get started again.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jose Padilla from Dow Capital Markets, Managing Director, Head of Debt Capital Markets. I am very happy to be here with Orlando. Orlando has been a client of mine for a very long time. I'm very honored to have been invited with our chairman, Mr. Machida, this week. It's our first Sustainability Week. And yeah, it's a tremendous event. So in terms of the framing for this, looking across global markets, we have seen that sustainability and impact are considered less niche themes. They're increasingly more a focus of how the investors look at long-term value and resilience. And basically, when we talk to institutional investors about what they're looking for in terms of value, we've seen a really great sort of feedback in terms of how they want to continue to invest in projects across Latin America and the Caribbean. Whether we're talking about water-related climate bonds or new products such as blue bonds, which is something that I think we've done with you and you've done recently in the Swiss market. Investors continue to ask how they can use their capital for long-term or maximizing long-term value while getting the impact that they want out of the market. This is going to be kind of an important item that we're going to discuss today in terms of this talk. Now, when we look at these projects, we always focus on assets, and assets being sort of the primary item here. Whether it's social infrastructure or green climate initiatives, we always look at assets, and basically we don't want to define our projects alone by our assets. I think we need to look across the entire balance sheet. So that's going to be a very important topic today. So whether it's something related to when we're looking across the balance sheet in terms of assets and our liabilities, our risk capital, our social infrastructure, they all need to be aligned. So Orlando, I ask you, when you're looking as a CFO, from a CFO's perspective, why is just looking at assets not sufficient? Why do we have to look across the entire balance sheet for sustainable development finance?
So thank you, Jose. This conversation started at IDB Invest around 2020. We were growing. We were this organization that put together all of the private sector pieces of the IDB group into one, what we call the merge out. And our funding program was growing. And we took a look at what we did on the asset side. What did we do with our clients when our clients wanted to issue sustainable bonds? And two ideas came to mind. First, how do we use the whole balance sheet to think about sustainability? And that's when we started thinking about a sustainable bond program. And it had to have essentially two characteristics. One was we needed to walk the talk. So our sustainable debt program had to be as rigorous as or be structured in the same way that we would structure for our clients. So the same conditions, the same type of reporting, the same type of accountability that we were asking our clients, we wanted that to be the same for us. So to be a fully accountable, responsible framework. And the second one was, how can we create a virtuous cycle? having access to issue debt, sustainable debt ourselves, and connecting that with everyone else in the organization, connecting with the development impact team, connecting with, obviously with the business team. How can we create a virtuous cycle where the availability of sustainable debt financing or funding in our case was also prompting creating the assets that would support that kind of a framework on the asset side, and so on and so forth. So that was really the thought, and so we put together the plan in 2020. We started issuing in 2021. And so far, we've issued $6.2 billion of sustainable debt at IDB, and it now represents roughly half of our overall debt. It also became important later because of the way rating agencies are looking at our balance sheet. They're looking at it holistically and making sure that that we are accomplishing our mission in every way possible. So that was really the thought behind how can we use all of our balance sheet to make it sustainable. And there are other aspects that we can talk about a little later, but that was the origin of our work, especially from the point of view of multilateral like us.
Yeah, that market shift is very real. I think when investors start thinking about how they look at sustainable development finance, they always obviously look at the feel-good integrity values of being in sustainable development finance. And during Sustainability Week, we focus so much on how we're going to improve economies, how we're going to improve the lives of people, et cetera, et cetera. But from a market point of view, investors are constantly wondering, how is it that I can continue to work or invest in IDB Invest and have it continue to be financially sound and important for the market. So how do you accomplish that?
So I think the first point here is the same way as sustainability is not a niche concept anymore, that there's appetite for projects on the asset side that are sustainable. The same is true for investors. Investors are looking for that connection. And if you can provide a direct connection to those assets, what we have seen is an important diversification of our investor base. So the same way that you see that sustainability in the assets makes sense because it makes the assets better, the same is true on the funding side, because it helps us diversify our funding sources. And one thing we were discussing with Yanis Evanto, our treasurer, is really a correlation between the type of funding that we do, and what we sort of concluded was that, especially when we do private placements, and we do private placements when we want longer tenors, and usually when we go to private placement, it's more frequent that we find investors who want sustainable bonds. It's not a direct correlation necessary, but it's more frequent. And so when you think about how you need to fund the organization, it also makes business sense. The same way as it's on the asset side, it makes business sense on the funding side. So as I mentioned in your previous question, we started thinking about how can we improve the way we accomplish our mission. But at the end of the day, when we started actually issuing these this sustainable debt, we found that it also made business sense because of, again, the diversification of the investors base, and also these opportunities to better plan, come with a better strategy on how to do a funding program that now is approaching $3 billion per year.
Let's continue on the topic of looking across the entire balance sheet. On the funding side, liability side, Obviously, you have a long reputation with investors in terms of how you access the market, the methods that you present your funding strategy to the market, and how basically we approach investors on a regular basis in terms of funding. On the asset side, you have new products, innovative products, where investors can participate directly in projects such as the AB bond. So how do these complement each other, and how do you fit them in terms of your overall treatment of sustainable development finance?
So that's an important point. It goes to this concept of the virtuous cycle, right? Having the right funding creates opportunities, and when the investment officers, the people who are on the front line, understand that they on the funding side they can get the right funding for X, Y, or Z type of projects, they are more prone to originate those projects, and then this virtuous cycle continues. But directly to your point, we've been using the AB loan structure for a very long time, and it's a powerful tool to mobilize resources. Capital is always scarce, even though we've been very lucky to have two successive capital increases, one in 2015 and now a new one in 2024. So the shareholders trust on the work that IDB Invest is doing, so they provide this capital. But capital is always going to be scarce when you look at a growing demand in the region. So mobilizing resources is very important. And AB loan is kind of a bedrock of how we bring in investors who benefit from the umbrella of IDB Invest. They understand that we have right now we're getting closer to 200 people in the region. We understand the region, and investors are more comfortable coming in when they can come in with IDB Invest. The interesting thing is, and you probably heard from some of my colleagues, Fabio Fagundes talked about this on day one, but this is a key piece of our new business model. And we want to make sure that we use every tool in our arsenal to mobilize resources. So for example, in 2025, out of the $13 billion of operations in 2025, $7.7 billion was mobilization. So roughly $4 billion was what we put on our own account, and the difference was mobilization through AB loans, but also through sale of assets, through securitization that we were able to retap in 2025, and also through careful management of our assets. So our risk-weighted asset target was accomplished and even improved. So all of that freed up capital, so we could get up to $13 billion of activity, with $4 billion actually ending up in our book. So again, going to the funding side, this is extremely important. Why? Because part of this business model is also, and Yane will have a panel tomorrow to talk about local currency. That's a key component of the business model. So being able to fund ourselves in local currency is also important. And if memory serves, we have issued sustainable bonds in 6 different currencies, which is also, again, creates this virtuous cycle. So the AB bond structure is again the bedrock, but we are working to put together other tools so we can maximize the participation of private capital in our operations.
Now let's look at some items that typically aren't considered, or were considered more related to compliance. So things such as governance, integrity, the broader non-financial risks. How are those topics treated within your own purview, and basically how do you make it so that your clients are embedding it into their own framework, most importantly?
Absolutely. So there's two sides, right? With Rachel Roboy, my colleague, who's the chief risk officer of IDB Invest, we take equal care when looking at the credit quality of an operation and looking at the what we call the non-financial risks of an operation, which includes environmental and social and corporate governance and integrity, all of these elements that as a multilateral we have to care and are part of our projects. And what we have found ample evidence of is that non-financial risk can very quickly become financial risks. So if we don't take equal care to look at all of these elements that are, again, the non-financial side, they can put a project in jeopardy very quickly. So every quarter, this is again on the asset side, every quarter we look at all of our portfolio. We try to be proactive because, again, we're a development finance institution. We can be patient. And when we find that a client needs our help, we're happy to provide it. Only exception is if there's an issue of character, then you can do. There's nothing you can do about that. But if there are market issues, if there are issues that the client couldn't necessarily predict and need some help or need some more time, we're happy to help. But we're looking at both. Every quarter, we're looking at all of the financial aspects of the operation and the non-financial aspects of the operation. And we've become very fluent at measuring these and making sure that we have the right KPIs and the right look at the portfolio. But we also do that for and to ourselves, right? Again, the other side of the walk the talk part. We are rated by all three rating agencies, and they take very careful note of our own governance, our own risk parameters and policies, our own risk appetite policies. They look at our management, the quality of the management. They look at how we manage all of these financial and non-financial risks ourselves. People here who work for DFIs or sovereigns will know that when we are rated, we are rating on two very different. We take two different exams. One is a financial exam where they look at our liquidity and our usage of capital or management of risk. But then there's another aspect which they call the business profile, but that includes our systemic importance, our governance, our management, shareholder support. They look at all of these, let's say, less tangible aspects. So to your point, we have to take care of both. We have to take care of the financial aspects, but we certainly have to take care of the non-financial aspects, both on our projects and ourselves.
Thank you very much, Orlando, for this great conversation. There's a biblical saying that the greatest among us serve. And I've not met someone who epitomizes that more than you. So I congratulate you, sir, on being a fantastic server to this institution and to this market and to everything that you've represented. So congratulations.
So if you allow me an anecdote, I started working at the Inter-American Investment Corporation. This is still the formal name of our organization, now IDB Invest, in 2006. By 2010 or so, we were a small organization back then, 160 people doing around $400 million a year, far from the 700 and 750 people doing 13 or 14 billion dollars a year today. And we had no presence in capital markets at that stage. And around 2010, we started saying, well, maybe it's a good idea to put together a program and start tapping international markets. And it wasn't easy to find people interested in taking a tiny multilateral, a tiny DFI to the market. The volumes that we were looking for back then were small. So that's when I met Jose, and Daiwa took us on and took this little DFI to the market. And initially we said, well, maybe 200 million might make sense. The demand was so high, we ended up taking 350 million, and we had no idea what we were going to do with all that money at that time. It ended up being providential. So I just wanted to recognize my friend Jose, who was there when we were tiny and still here when we are not so tiny. So from that point to issuing an annual issuance that's approximating $3 billion a year, it's kind of a very interesting ride. But if you allow me one point that I missed that I think it's important. Part of our sustainable debt program is reporting. And I encourage anyone who wants to take a look to go to our website and look at the latest report that reports on what we've done up to 2024. By October this year, you'll see the report for 2025. But if you go to the last 2 pages of the report, you will see a detailed list of about 120 projects by then, linked, and how those projects were linked year by year to each of the sustainable debt issuances. That is a powerful, we believe it's a powerful message for our investors, because they can go to this report and they can see exactly where the money that they provided through a sustainable debt program went, to which projects in which countries. If I'm not mistaken, and Yannick can correct me, we have done those 120 projects up to 2024, have covered 22 countries so far, and have impacted those 22 countries in a very special manner, because there's a linkage there between the funding and the actual project. And we will continue being accountable and making sure that our investors understand where their resources are going and how those resources are being managed and directed to impact projects. So I wanted to make sure that we say that we want to remain accountable, and that when we go back to investors, that they can count on us to be that transparent.
Thank you very much for that explanation. You guys have always been the model issuer, so the entire market recognizes that, and that level of transparency has always gone a long way with your institution.
And since we're here, I think you mentioned our blue bonds, and that's one of the products that we want to continue working on. We've done 5 so far, approaching 400 million in blue bonds, and since we're surrounded by the ocean, I wanted you to know that we certainly want to continue working on that front, and we're very grateful for everyone who helped organize these sessions, and all of you who are here. I just heard that this is Sustainability Week. There are 900 people attending here, and we've had about 12,000 connected online. And so I wanted to give a big round of applause to everybody who put this together. It doesn't look, sometimes it's like those football games, right? When you don't notice the referees because he's doing something right. And so if you don't if you see the people who are around organizing, say thank you, because it's a big undertaking. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.